So my question is, if elected, how do you intend, in your role as Washington State Attorney General, to reassess the criminal justice system and systemic inequalities within the legal system?
Thank you for the question. One thing I'm fond of saying is that Lady Justice is blindfolded. In other words, when you go look at the statue of her, she's weighing the scales of the balance of evidence and facts and the law, but she's blindfolded. In other words, she's not supposed to see someone and make any prejudgment or, as you mentioned, inequalities. The first thing that the Attorney General's office will be doing under my watch is making sure that we work with our local prosecutors as well as our criminal defense, public defenders, making sure that they've got the financial support and the legislative support that they need. And if we have to, we'll work with the folks in Olympia to make sure that the financial system is well supported. Again, one of these issues that we're seeing is the public defenders in particular are overworked. And that's not to say that the prosecuting attorneys aren't, but the public defenders are overworked and they're actually looking at modifying their caseloads. So when someone gets charged with a crime, they don't have the ability to have defense as required under the Constitution. I want to make sure that we've got the ability to have folks properly defended and represented. And if they are in fact guilty, we'll want them, punished. And that's going to be how we're really going to ferret out what the importance of the Attorney General's office is when it comes to criminal justice. Additionally, we'll want to make sure that, again, folks are treated fairly and equally, that Lady Justice is in fact blindfolded under my administration. So regardless of race, creed, color, sexual orientation, that the same people get the same treatment. I know that sounds like, a lot of kind of pie in the sky, but I think first funding the important offices is step one, and making sure that it's done without a bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. And really, the first place to start with me is to make sure that we're talking about this challenge as not a criminal justice system problem, but a criminal justice systems problem, because we have multiple different legal systems in our state and our country, all of whom have unique problems and all of whom are part of the problem, really, when it comes to inequities in our system. So we have local prosecutions happening in cities. We have county prosecutions in Washington, led by county prosecutors' offices. We have a federal legal system from the Department of Justice, office that I just left. And sometimes these systems don't work together and they don't collaborate well, and they're not all dealing with the same types of problem. But the inequities that you talked about is really a serious issue when it comes to our legal systems, because we have shown over and over again that if you are a person of color, that if you come from an impoverished background, that the outcomes that you are facing within our system are not the same if you come from money or if you are white in America and in Washington. So there's a lot of different things that we need to do. One, we need to make sure that we're continuing to reassess the laws that we have on the books, because some of those laws for many, many years had inequitable treatment for drugs, for example, that were used more disproportionately by communities of color versus those drugs that were used by non-communities of color. And we need to continue to look for those things as issues that we can correct on our system. We need to make sure that all of the various systems, so that if you are someone that is working multiple jobs, that you still have access to our system, rather than someone who has the luxury of taking time off from their job. We need to make sure that our systems have all of the language and disability access that they need to make sure that it's as fair as possible. We've seen time and time again that if you are not a native English speaker, that you have a much harder path to justice in our system, both in criminal justice and in the civil system. So there are inequities that we can fix there. We need to make sure that we have people working in our systems that come from these communities. More and more and more in my work, I saw how if we had people from diverse backgrounds sitting as judges, working as prosecutors, working as defense lawyers, they were much more attuned to some of the issues that communities of colors are facing and much better suited to address some of the inequities that we have. But also, we need to think about our justice system as not the only tool to address public safety. Time and time again, when people get concerned with crime, they look only to law enforcement and only to prison as the solution for some of these problems that we're facing. And those are important tools, and I don't want to undermine those tools as being part of the puzzle. But in my mind, the things that make safety, public safety sustainable are things that have nothing to do with our legal systems. Those are things like education, and making sure that's more equitable, jobs that give people an opportunity, housing that keep people with a safe roof over their head. If we build those systems and reinvest in those communities that are facing disadvantages in all of those things that make safety sustainable, we're much more likely to have better outcomes moving forward. But it's going to take all of these things moving in concert and working more proactively to really get to some of these root cause inequities that our systems are facing. Thank you.
Thank you.